Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're back. And I think I might have a little surprise for you, in fact. Let me see if I can create some magic here. On the count of three, let me think if I can get a genie out of a bottle. 1, 2, 3.
Good morning, Justin. And good morning, everyone. Come on in. There are no pens and papers today. It's not that kind of show. Come on in, relax. Some of you have done 8 hours of work already by 11 o'clock. So I want everybody, as you're coming in, here comes Stan. He doesn't like the house coffee, by the way. Thank you for joining us, Stan. He prefers the coffee from Cafe Joya down the street. But anyway, there's house coffee and tea at the table. Come on in, everyone. I want everyone to go like this. Let it go. Everything that you've been dealing with this morning, the business call, the doctor's appointments, the kid crying, the neighbor's barking dog, leave it all in the hallway. Leave it out there. Come in here, get some rest, get some ideas, get some hope, get some love, and get some of the, what Jock always called the feel-good show, unity and community. Good morning, everyone. Come on in. Plenty of chairs. Here comes my brother. He's always running late. He was always late for church, too. So anyway, good morning, Jock. How are you?
I must say that your skills are, increasing right in front of our very eyes. Or should I say in front of our very ears.
In very, very ears. And I want everyone to know that we didn't rehearse this surprise, that Jock we do frenzy. Jock and I have both, even though he was an athlete in high school and so was I, we did segue into show business. And we know how to improvise. And you could put the two of us on a stage with no script. Believe me, you got a 3-hour show.
It'd be dead silence.
and he's the better looking one. And really, I say this joke all the time, but his dressing room is beautiful. I have my face the brick wall. I don't know what it is there, but welcome to the Feel Good Show, Jock. Thank you. I came on a little early. It's going to be a shorter segment, boys and girls, because Jock is doing a great service, WAPJ, bringing on people from both sides of the political aisle to share their views, their hearts, so that we all make the right decision that's good for us. Please, everyone, vote. My father walked across Germany. Someone of your fathers walked across a rice paddy in Vietnam. Pull the lever for the person that pulled the trigger so you can live in a country. It's not perfect. I know that. But believe me, I don't see a lot of people on rafts going the other way, okay? So these people are coming on his show. They're giving up their time. Had the probate judge earlier. Listen to the show. Vote, vote, vote. That's what this country is founded on. So I wanted to come on today, Jock, and I will get upbeat. We're not going to do the shout-outs because I want to talk about something else in place of that. I'll do the shout-outs in a couple of weeks when I come back. Lady Boz and I, with our good friends Fred and Lucille, and my daughter Emily and her boyfriend Storm will be in St. Augustine's next week, so I won't be able to do the show. But after that, boys and girls, we should have non-interruption. Last week, I apologize. I was supposed to be on, but due to my visual impairment, I have a bunch of drivers who are fabulous, and we just couldn't line it up with them and me, so I had to make other arrangements to get down to Plainville for business. But I tell my friends all the time, they have lives. Their lives is not my life. And so they give up a lot of their time and money and their car to transport me back and forth. And sometimes their lives take precedence over mine. And so they were all committed, so I had to make other arrangements. Now, let me get to what's heavy on my heart. And I spoke to Jock about this off the air. We had a shooting here in Bristol, where Bristol meets Plainville. Yes, a good neighborhood. It was a domestic dispute in a good town. And of the 3 police officers, 2 died. 1, from what I understand from the quick things that I'm getting, was expecting a child with his wife. That child will grow up fatherless. The other police officer is fighting for his life. Scripture tells us there is no greater gift than when one lays down his life for another. Our police officers, and I'm not going to get political, whether you agree, disagree, we don't have time for all that, but these people are putting their lives on the line for us. They deserve our respect and admiration. 2 men are gone and lives are ruined, and they're there to defend us. Our flags are at half-mast. I even heard there's police officers from Bridgeport coming up to Bristol. They're going to do some sort of moratorium in honor of these 2 men. It's an awful, awful tragedy. And, you know, people are probably shaking their head. Bristol, Plainville area? Bristol, Plainville area? Let me tell you something. My father and mother moved out of Brooklyn in 1960. My father worked for a guy named Al Silver at Motorama Furniture. Al Silver was a millionaire many times over and a genius. And my father incorporated Al Silver's business mindset into his own business that was successful. And my brother and I, in our painting business and contracting business, uses, and my brother still uses, a lot of Al Silver's business mentality. But my father went to work and he said, Al, I bought a house on Long Island. I'm out of Brooklyn, out of the apartment. I got myself a nice house with his grass in the front yard. And Al Silver looked at this is 1960, boys and girls. Al Silver looked at him and said, Steve, you can only go so far. After a while, you're going to back right up into it. You know what Al Silver was talking about, everyone? What just happened in Bristol. You can't run away from it. You got to pray for it. Something has to be done. And this was a domestic dispute. I don't know all of it. You can't run away from it. It's not just in Hartford. It's not just in Stamford. It's everywhere. So, Steve, you're going to back up into it. Al Silver was right 62 years ago. What a great guy he was, and what a very smart man he was. So, now, the topic of the show, and let me see if we can get back on track, but please pray for these families whose lives, for now, are ruined. But in God's good grace, there will be, it was always hope. And as St. Paul says, hope does not disappoint. Okay, last week, I had 2 tremendous experiences, and I'm going to call, this is not a topic like normal. This is just me doing another freestyle show. I've been very, very, very busy with plants, animals, traveling, and so I did not have the time to prepare like I normally do for the show. So I'm going to do a extemporaneous show again today. I hope some of you enjoy it. If you don't, that's okay. Use the grocery store approach. Take what you want, leave on the shelf what you don't like. But on the 27th of September, I went back to the Big E with our good friends Fred and Lucille, and I haven't been there in 7 years since my younger daughter Rachel stopped showing and my late wife passed away. Later that week, on the 30th of September, my twin brother and his beautiful wife Lynn took me and them, obviously, to Long Island at a little town called Williston Park, where I just spoke about. We moved in 1960. We lived there for 16 years. It felt like a lifetime. My late wife used to say to me, why do you tell everybody you're from Long Island? I said, honey, where you ride a bike, hit a home run, and go on your first date, that's where you're from. If you ask Jock where he's from, he loves Torrington, he'll tell you he's from Ohio for the same reasons. So we went back to Long Island. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to talk about the Big E and Long Island. And I had a very nice discussion over dinner with Fred and Lucille and Veronica about what I was going to talk about today. And I had very surprising results of what I'm going to call my 2 homecomings. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my elder daughter, Emily, okay, and talk about the Big E and how that became a home to us. Now, all of you have different life experiences because you've all had different journeys. People like Veronica and I and Lucille, we've had children, like Peggy, she's had children. Some of you in the audience, chose not to have children, maybe could not have children. So your life journey is going to be different than mine. Your experiences are going to be different than mine. No one has lived your life. Fred has lived his life. Stephen has lived his life. Tommy has lived his life. Jock. So the lives we live, and it's only our life, no one has lived our life, includes our experiences. So the way I'm going to relate to these two homecomings is very different than my brother. Okay, he and his wife didn't have children. So you may be surprised at my analogy at the end, but it's my walk of life. It's my journey of faith. It's my journey, okay? Now, let me start. I want to keep an eye because Jock has other people coming on the show today, and we have to kind of move this along because we have a beautiful song. The song actually inspired the talk and the experiences. So here we go. We took Emily to the Big E, and it started in 1994. We were not big birthday people. You know, a lot of people in the audience, you know, come over for cake. It's Muffy's birthday. Come over for cake. You know what I say? What happened to the rest of the meal? Where's the chicken cutlets? Where's the pork chops? Okay? I mean, they have you for cake, but there's no first part of it. But my late wife, my mother, my grandmother, when we did have people over, we just didn't have them over for the cake, okay? So we had the whole meal. But when Emily was born, her first birthday, we did the traditional birthday with family and all of that. By 1994, I said to my late wife, you know, you and I had this child. We love this child. Why don't we forget all that stuff, the cake? Why don't the three of us do something special with Emily? So we said, let's go to the Big E. And there's going to be three stories I'm going to tell, similar like when I did the show last time. One is called Cowgirl, one is going to be called Peter Pan, and the other one is Pocketbook. So we take Emily to the Big E in 1994 for the first time. Now, I'm going to pause for a moment because I'm going to be jumping back and forth a little bit. I don't want you guys to get confused. We're going to then talk about my younger daughter, and then we're going to come back to 1994 again. So just work with me, follow me, and it'll be okay. So the first time we went to the Big E was 1994, and Emily was a cowgirl. She had a cowboy hat, a little vest we got for her. And we had the stroller. Of course, she wasn't in it. All our coats were. And then those who have kids are probably nodding, saying, yeah, I wish I had a stroller now when I go out. Need someplace to put something. So we're walking into the Mallory building, which a lot of you would call the dairy building up at the Big E. Most of you have been in there. And now follow this, as we're walking in, Emily's ahead, you know, her mother's ahead of her, and there's a big ring there, and there's kids in the ring showing cows. Now just hang on to that. And they got the number of 5, 6, 7, 8. They're walking around. Now, this is 1994. My younger daughter wasn't even born until 1996. And I said to my late wife, gee, people do this? They show cows today in this world? And she said, I guess so. And so little Emily and her mother and I walked through the mountain. Now, hold that thought for when I come back to it after the break. Walked through, and I could still see her. We went to see the sheep shearing, and the guy said, does anybody have a question? And Emily raised her hand, and she said, do you make sweaters out of that? So the guy told her that, and we had an awesome day, our first time taking her to the Big E. And I'm going to tell you these stories, and I'm going to tell you what happened when I went back with Fred and Lucille on the 27th of September. But I have to set the tone with these stories first. The next one, Peter Pan, we went up again. It was a rainy year, 1995, and Emily wasn't dressed as a cowgirl. And we're walking through, and we get into the Vermont building, and there was a whole cast of Peter Pan, Dr. Hook, Peter Pan, Tinkerbell, the whole thing. And they said, oh, little girl, why are you here? And she said, it's my birthday. My parents always take me to the Big E. So he got the whole cast, Captain Hook and everybody. They all got around Emily, and they all sang happy birthday to her in the Vermont building. Hold that thought. Let me just see the time. How we're doing here. We should be okay. All right. So now the third story is called Pocketbook. Now we go up to the Big E with more of an adult daughter. She's about 12, almost 13. And her mother bought her a pocketbook, and it had a bunch of different compartments on it. And we're walking down the midway where all the shops are, and I have a cup of coffee, and I'm letting mother and daughter shop, and I stand aside. And because it was a new pocketbook, every time they stopped at a vendor, Emily opened the little flap. They went to the next. She opened another flap with the zipper. She fixed the shoulder part, and she opened another flap. So excited that she had a pocketbook. And I stood there with my coffee, and I looked, and I said to myself, what happened to the cowgirl? What happened to the girl that they sang happy birthday to? I now have a young woman. And that image of her opening up that pocketbook at every step of the way, and those women in the audience, you're probably nodding, remembering your first pocketbook as you begin to enter young womanhood. And her mother helping her, taking out the money to pay for things. This year for Emily's birthday, she and Storm went to Denver. She was out in Denver, and I was here in Connecticut. That's what it means to have children. A student of mine, her name was Anne-Marie Becker. Her mother always said to me, Tommy, you got to give your children roots. You got to give them wings. And so they have wings. When I went up to the Big E with Fred and Lucille this year, I walked along that very same avenue and in that very same Mallory building. And I could see Emily. I haven't been up to the Big E in 7 years since Rachel stopped showing and my wife died. To walk into that Mallory building and to see her in that cowboy hat, to walk into the Vermont building and think about Peter Pan, and especially to walk along the Midway where all the little shops are, I got very choked up. What's interesting is on the 30th, when I went back to my Long Island home, and my brother and I and sister-in-law were able to get into the house, the new owner let us in. I stood in the exact spot where my mother said she was pregnant with my sister. I stood in the exact spot where my mother said we were moving to Connecticut. We were able to look around. They were still doing construction on the house. We walked the whole town. I walked into the church. I walked into our school. The school let us in. I went to St. Aidan's School. My brother and I walked through the school. I remember a librarian, Brother Aquinas, who taught me how to tell time because I had a hard time with math. But now I'm going to do the break, and then I'm going to talk about Rachel the Big E, and then I'm going to give you my closing surprise emotions at the end. So, Jock, why don't we do the break right now, and then I'm going to come back, talk about the other daughter, and then I'm going to wrap things up so you can make time for your other guests.
Your radio skills, I'm telling you, T-Boz, they're improving by the minute. You're right on time with the bottom of the hour sponsors, and I'm sure that they are going to be delighted by that. So we want to take this opportunity to recognize and thank our sponsors for allowing WAPJ to celebrate 25 years of broadcast service to the Torrington community and now beyond. Going to give a big, huge shout out to the Nutmeg Conservatory for the Arts, Torrington Savings Bank, TDI, Torrington Distributors Incorporated, and Charlotte Hungerford Hospital. Thank you so much for allowing us to bring you the quality community programming that we're doing at this time, as is the case with T-Boz, with moments, words of wisdom, and moments of meditation. And we'll turn the show back over to T-Boz.
I have a younger daughter, Rachel, and she got involved in 4-H up here. And those of you out there who have grandchildren or children and they have animals, the most awesome program going. And she got involved with rabbits and then swiftly moved up to showing cows. Okay. Now, it wasn't twisting my arm to help her show these cows because my brother and I, back in the 60s, back in Long Island, we would get up Sunday mornings and watch this show called The Modern Farmer. Oh, to see the guys making hay and the cows and the pigs on the show and the grain. We loved it. And right after that was the show Davy and Goliath. It was put on by the Presbyterian Church. Remember, hey, Davy, Remember the dog? Hey, Davey, the talking dog. Wasn't it great in the 60s? Maybe Miles was listening. Remember those days we had talking dogs, talking horses. We had women that were genies and blinked their eyes, and other women that were witches and wiggled their nose. What wonderful programming. Now we have things like Yellowstone and all of this awful things. And I don't watch TV because you just hear about things like we heard in Bristol. But my brother and I loved The Modern Farmer. Then we loved Davy and Goliath, and then it was off to church in those days. But that was a wonderful show. So when Rachel got involved in agriculture, it really wasn't a twist of my arm, okay? So now Rachel gets involved in showing cows. And she moves up through the program. There's a whole system there. And by 2009, she was selected for one of the Litchfield County 4-H'ers to show up at the Big E. Now I'm in the Mallory building. It's 2009. Next to me, I have my 18-year-old daughter, who was once 4 years old. And we're sitting in the stands. We're not over in the alleyway where you walk in or the opening. And I look to my right, and my daughter, Emily, slaps my leg, and in comes my daughter, all in white, the way they do it in the dairy program, with the numbers on, showing cows in a major Eastern States, boys and girls, is the major dairy show right here in our backyard. And my older daughter, Emily, who was the cowgirl, who had the pocketbook, who was sung Happy Birthday by Peter Pan, slaps me on the leg and says, Pop, could you ever imagine that when we were walking over there and I was 4 years old, that you would be sitting here in the stands with your daughter showing dairy cows? I couldn't have imagined it. And for the next 7 years, we spent up at Big E watching Rachel grow from a 13-year-old kid all the way up to 20, showing dairy cows. When I walked into the Mallory building with Fred and Lucille, not only did I see, like I said, Emily with the cowboy hat, but I looked at the show ring, and I could see my younger daughter walking in again. It was homecoming. Rachel finished up her showing career with dairy, finishing the top 5th dairy handler in all of New England. They take the best 25 kids in all the New England states, and they have it's win or go home. And they give you other people's cows. It's not the ones you work with. And they do it in the big arena where they do the horse shows. Unfortunately, Justin and I went up to see her, but my wife was deceased at that year. And Rachel was in the ring, and there were cow after cow after cow, and it's single elimination. And she finished her career being in the top 5 in all of New England, showing dairy cattle. Quite an accomplishment for a kid that was born in Bridgeport. And that's what's so great about the 4-H program, boys and girls. We live in Torrington, but she was able to be part of the ag community. She had a string, 10 jerseys that she showed all over. And I had 14 years of the best years, one of the best years of my life. I said to Rachel many times, when I die, I still have her dress whites from showing up at Big E. I said, when I die, Rachel, I want those whites put in my casket with me. My friends, what is the purpose of all these stories? When I went back home to Long Island, I was moved. But I found that I was more moved and more emotional when I went to the Big E. Why? Now, a lot of you, my brother had a different experience. My friend Fred had a different experience. My friend Lucille agreed with me. What I have come to realize from this heartfelt experience is that not for me, not the childhood that I had in Long Island, but the childhood of raising my children, the experiences we had at the Big E were bigger and more emotional for me. What I found out is that probably going to Long Island would have been a bigger emotional thing for my parents had they been alive, because that's where they raised their children. Children that you have together with a spouse. Veronica understands what I'm talking about. I tell my children all the time, the closest I can be to their mother is when I'm with them. Is when I'm with them, not at a grave, because her DNA, everything is inside them. So by going up to the Big E, I was moved because the children that God helped me procreate, so many experiences. When I went back to Long Island, everything changed. The trees came down, newer sidewalks. They added on to the houses. The main tree was different. It was different. I kept telling my sister-in-law, this used to be here, that used to be there. But when I went up to the Big E on that Tuesday with my friends and Veronica, everything was the same. The Mallory building's the same. The Main Street the same. I was able to go home where I watched my kids grow, where I watched them develop. So the experiment, it wasn't an experiment, but I was so surprised. I thought I'd be more moved with my going back to Long Island. But I was more moved, as you heard me say, when I could still see Emily with the pocketbook, and I saw Rachel coming in with that Asher for the first time up at Big E. And we spent 7 years up there showing cattle, and even in the open show. Not bad for a guy from Long Island who used to watch The Modern Farmer. I thought I was in heaven. I really thought that God brought us to Connecticut for that. We were on our way to Vermont to start a dairy farm, but God had other plans. And so, my friends, some of you may have experiences like this, maybe not. The purpose of all of this is to realize that you have a gift. And unfortunately, these police officers, this child that's in this woman's womb, may not have the same type of thing. Maybe someday, maybe a wonderful man will come into her life and help that child grow. But I've been blessed. I'm not rich. I wasn't the best father. I didn't do everything right. But Og Bandino says, when I lay my head to rest, I know I've done my best. But I gave my all. Whatever my kids needed, not wanted, what they needed, I was there. I never put business or work or anything ahead of them. And I say to all of you young parents, spend time with your kids. Those of you who are middle parents or teenagers, spend time with your kids. Those of you who are grandparents, spend time. Don't neglect your wife. I talk about that on the show, but spend time with those children. Because, like my grandmother said, life is a circle. And one day you blink and you're the grandfather. Now Rachel has a son. She doesn't really care anymore about cows for now. She has a son. His name is Jackson. And she loves him. And she looks at him the same way she used to look over the fence at me when she came in first place. That big smile, beautiful brown eyes. So Emily was in Denver. She has a wonderful man in her life. Rachel has a wonderful man, my son-in-law, Justin. She has another wonderful man, Jackson. Life goes on. There's a wonderful song that we're going to play in a couple of seconds, a minute, and I want all of you to listen to, because the words really speak about what I'm talking about here. I do have a takeaway, and it's by Barbara Kingsolver, who is a novelist and poet, an American novelist and poet, and she says, "But kids do not stay with you forever. If you do it right, it's the only job where the better you are at it, the more surely you won't be needed in the long run." Boom. The better you are. I think I did a good job. They're on their own. They're doing their thing. They're carving their lives. And one day, Rachel doesn't know it, but her and Justin are going to say, I can't believe Jackson's 35 years old. And they'll have their memories. And Emily will have hers. It may not be the Big E. It may not be Long Island, but it'll be carved in their hearts. And I talk about this to Veronica all the time. You wonder about having children. Yeah, there's challenges when they crack up the cars and they clean the car with a Brillo pad or whatever. But in the end, that's the decision I made. So, Jock, you want to tie a little bow? Because I really want to get to this song before you have your next guest.
Well, let's just go to the song.
Yes.
And I think that they'll get the message through the song.
I think so, too. Everyone, thank you. We'll be back in 2 weeks. And thank you all for listening and being part of the Feel Good Show with Jock Williams and I. and listen to the song.
Thank you, T-Boz.
Bye-bye, Friday Eve.